So when you're designing with images, we talked about this before, dominance draws attention. So you want to make sure that you have kind of a dominant element within your design. This newspaper page, they didn't make all of the photographs the same size because that would have just kind of made it stagnant. People, their eyes would bounce back and forth and they wouldn't necessarily see what was most important. So that rule of thumb holds for this as well. Make the largest photo on a page about twice the size of the next largest image. I feel like I've already had enough snow just in this one day. Um, and so sometimes we can just make that choice for the reader and give them something to really focus on. And you're using hierarchy. So if I had 5 photographs and I played them all about the same size, it is dull, right? So we want to think about making a decision and maybe taking those same 5 photographs, aligning them so that you have a dominant and a nice hierarchy, and it becomes a lot more interesting. Rather than filling up all of the space, we would introduce that white space to the outside, which makes it more inviting. And then you want to think about kind of an internal consistency. Like the space between elements, it helps if it is roughly the same. Try to keep that. You might be using a grid, or maybe you just find a measurement, but you're pulling those images together into one unit. And again, the white space goes to the outside. You're making really strong choices. And it matters because then we can concentrate not on those little weird details or distracting things that don't line up, but we can concentrate on powerful photographs. So white space to the outside, internal consistency between elements. You want to think about in this design that you're going to make, keeping the fold clear. Like you're designing 2 pages that would fold, and this has a real clear fold. I chose this image because it's been around for a while. But if you had designed that photograph going across the fold, it's going to be really distracting. So you want to make sure that whatever, like you don't want to put type across the fold. You would want to keep type clean and to either side. Maybe a big headline could cross the fold, but not the detailed type and certainly not someone's face. Okay. You're going to want to establish a focal point. And that is, maybe you have 2 or 3 photographs on this magazine spread, but you want to define something where their eyes will hit there first, the focal point of the photograph, or maybe it's your typography. And I think your eye probably went to the woman on the right and then to the woman on the left. And then there's nice direction from the woman on the left, kind of pointing back to the woman on the right. We're drawn to faces. And so, consider the photos that you choose for finding the moment and finding that focal point. There are a lot of photographs on this page, but I would say the focal point is this guy, right? Because he's, active, he's in the most dominant photograph. So there's so much detail, and we're going to want to look at all the rest of the photos, but they've made kind of a choice to make him the focal point. Then, I don't know why I have the number 6 on this, just ignore that. I want you to consider the direction of the images that you're choosing. So like on this 2-page spread, I love the direction here. You might read the headline. This guy is looking straight at, I can't think of that woman's name, the actress. She's pointing down to Jared Leto, and he's pointing back up at her. I mean, it's like there's so much interesting dynamic just in the way they positioned the photographs. And that dynamic keeps your eye on the page. And the people down in the far right, I love that she is, her direction is going back into the page. If she was going off the page, it would be pretty distracting and it might just lead you to lose interest in that page. Same with this. The direction of this guy and his vacuum cleaner that he's using. If you had placed that photograph on the right hand side, it's just going to lead you to turn the page. There's something instinctive about that. So it's so much stronger to have him placed on the left and he's pointing into the text and into the rest of the page. In your designs, less can be more. Odd numbers kind of give us a sense of this pleasing asymmetry. If something is completely static, exactly the same size and symmetrical, while that can be interesting, symmetry can be interesting, but it quiets things down. And sometimes it's more interesting to have like an odd number of elements, keeping the white space to the outside and just having um, some action that comes from the asymmetry. You'll probably want to think about captions for your photos, and it's strongest when captions are placed near an image, like these are. If all of those captions had been like grouped together up on the top left, studies have shown that people don't read captions that they have to work to look, to say, oh, is that the top right photograph or is that the one that's directly beneath? So, as much as possible, you want to try to keep that information that goes with a photograph with the photograph. You might, as you're choosing photos, you might decide to juxtapose ideas. Like maybe you find a photograph of somebody um, wearing their hair huge and somebody who's wearing their hair all slicked back, or someone who has 16 patterns in what they're wearing and somebody who is this very simple, sleek silhouette. So you can choose images, and there's symmetry here and asymmetry, but they're making this clear direction between these details. The headline says, Dream States Where the Eye Collides with the Natural Order. Here is an interesting juxtaposition of intention, and it's 1996 and 1998. Two different emotions with somebody that's very connected. This photograph, just by itself, has a juxtaposition of ideas. In thinking of people who are bound to the earth and in maybe a tough situation in this refugee camp, of course, and they're dropping supplies for people on the ground, but just the whole idea of the freedom of flight and people who are caught in their situation, that's a strong juxtaposition. So as you're going through those photos, you might decide that you want to pick up a whole series of details. Maybe it's all about hats and shoes and handbags and whatever. Or maybe it's about just the dynamic moment. So think thematically as you're choosing images. So we've talked about dominance on the page, internal consistency and the importance of white space, establishing a focal point, and thinking about the direction of images. And I do think it's always strongest when you start with a sketch. You can sketch out all sorts of different dynamics in a quick way. I've